Hi, welcome and welcome back to the Nubian Review, where we talk about books and all bookish content. In this video, I would like to share with you some recommendations for learning about the great civil rights activist and historian Martin Luther King Jr. Well, we're going to say Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's the correct way to say it. Yes. So I want to share these recommendations, and these are books that I have not seen widely talked about on the internet. So I want to share some of these with you and hope that it will spark your interest to go either pull it from our library or look into purchasing it for your home library. The first one, a classic. So I want to try to buy something a little bit for everybody. So let me know if you would like more recs like this, because I have a slew of books about King, but I want to share this particular stack. The first one is Who Was Martin Luther King Jr.? And this is a children's book. Um, the one thing about children's book, okay, I've read this a couple of times. One when my son was younger, and recently when I decided I wanted to use this for a rec. I like it because of the language, but there are certain aspects in here I would caution parents to actually sit down and have honest conversations with their child about the death of Martin Luther King, and how they describe it. Um, yeah, it leaves a false sense that of what had happened. So that's all. That would be my one criticism of the book. Otherwise, the language of the book is friendly for young children to read, or someone who doesn't know anything really about Martin Luther King's life. It gives a full picture of his life. It doesn't talk so much about certain aspects of his life, more or less the activist part of his life. So I encourage, if you are an educator, a parent, this is a book, that will give some context of who King was. The next one, I found this book. I don't know where I found this book, but when I found it, I just never let it go. Martin Luther King. I couldn't give you an author because it doesn't have an author. But this goes over various activist groups that he was a part of. A little history about him in the beginning, but not so much of a history of him in the beginning. It really talks about, like I said, his years of activism and all the social groups that he had impacted through his work. And if you want to just know that about him, this is a great book of a summary of his work. The next one, and this is an era that I love covering. If you've ever been to this channel, if this is your first time, just letting you know, hi. I like covering books from the civil rights era as it talks about the Black lives, civil rights in America. This is more or less like a pamphlet, but look at the pictures in here, you guys. And this covers so much. Now, I chose it because King is more or less, along with other key players, is the focus point of this book. And I thought, you know what, this is a good guide, quick guide on someone who wants to really learn about the civil rights and have actual pictures and know a little bit about some of the key players, especially Martin Luther King. Next one is a book that I have not heard much people talk about, but this is a highly anticipated read for me, so I want to recommend it to you guys. 9 Days, The Race to Save Martin Luther King Jr., Life and Win the 1960 Election. Stephen Kendrick and Paul Kendrick. I'm assuming that they're siblings or brothers. I don't know. I'm not going to read the end flap, but this is autographed by one of them. Who is it autographed by? We're going to see who signed the book. Paul. It was autographed by Paul Kendrick. So let's get a short summary. Less than 3 weeks before the 1960 presidential election, 31-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested at a sit-in at Rich's department store in Atlanta. The day will lead to the first night that King ever spent in jail, and the time when families most feared for his life. A previous $25 traffic ticket was used as an excuse to keep King in custody after the other sit-in participants had been freed, and to sentence the young minister to 4 months of hard labor in Georgia Senate Prison in Rydesville, where black inmates worked on chain gangs overseen by violent white guards. Now, this is a story that has been talked about in various angles, in various books that I've read about Martin Luther King, and so I guess this right here highlights those days when highlights the event when he was arrested and what transpired after that. But let's just get this out here. King was a scholar. He went to college, Morehouse, when he was 15. He went to seminary school, and he graduated from seminary school, I would say, when he was like 21 or 22, with a advanced degree in divinity, and then, no, was it theology? But then he went to Boston University and got his PhD. So I would say by the age 26, 27, you are talking about a person who have invested so much in his life and his education, and they want to lock him up for a traffic ticket. And the reason why I highlight that is because our mass incarceration system, it doesn't treat everyone fairly. Black people are criminalized much harsher than their Caucasian counterparts, and that's just a reality that we're living with, and I don't think anybody can refute that. So that will be read soon. Another interesting book I have not seen, Alabama versus King, which probably Martin Luther King in the criminal trial that launched the civil rights movement. Dan Abrams and Fred D. Gray with David Fisher. And the reason why I shook my head is because at this juncture, what we're living through is that I will always say this. Let me read this right here right quick. On December the 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested when she refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man on the segregated Montgomery, Alabama. After years of mistreatment on public buses, the African American community organized a boycott. Every 89 people were indicted for violating the city's anti-boycott statute. But rather than putting each of them on trial, the prosecutors chose to make an example of just one, 27-year-old minister Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This became the movement that transformed Dr. King into a national leader. And currently, I'm just going to get away from this for a moment. I am doing a one-year read on David Garrow's Bearing the Cross. And it talks about King's humble origins. I'm talking about King's humble origins and how he was thrown in the limelight as a civil rights leader and activist because of his mistreatment and wanting to get justice and equality for African Americans. I'm going to pull this book up right quick, although this is not one of the recommendations, but this is the book I'm actually doing the community read on. So if you're interested, you can go to community read or Bearing the Cross. But the playlist is in the tab, and you can catch up on all the episodes, which are in 30-minute increments. So I load them like 2-3 at a time. And this is a year readout, so you have plenty of time. But I do encourage you to listen. So yes, getting back to this book, Alabama versus King. So this is one of those once again occasions where he is being charged for just being a brilliant black man, and that's just what it was. Because if you read any of the books or read the history, he basically addressed the rights everybody else was having. And so when I think about events that's going on right now in United States and how people lack the understanding and the sensitivity over race relations, I always think about how King deliberately, or reluctantly, we're going to say reluctantly, but then deliberately, went forward for fighting justice, for humanity, not just for just, African American and Black people, for everybody. So in saying that, I hope this video was an enjoyable short snippet of recommendations that you can add to your library, and come back and so we can have the chat and let me know if any of these topics or any of these books have you heard about. And if you have, leave something in the comment. And if you have other books about Martin Luther King, put it in the comments so we can share with the community. But until then, have a beautiful day wherever you are, everybody. Bye bye.